In this lesson, we're going to be talking about tunneling. Tunneling in this case has to do with taking a bunch of data and stuffing it into another kind of data to get it from one point to another. So much like a real tunnel, in going through the tunnel, you can't be seen from above. You would actually have to be inside the tunnel to see what's there. If you're tunneling data, you can't see what's inside the tunnel without actually tearing the tunnel apart or digging into it. Now, there are a couple of reasons why you may want to tunnel. One of the reasons is you may want some privacy where the data that you're sending, you don't want that to be seen. Another reason why you may want to or need to tunnel is if there are restrictions on the network, like a firewall, for example, that prevent certain types of data from either entering or exiting, you probably need a tunnel to get that data through. Now, there are a few different ways to do tunneling. I'm going to talk about a couple of them here. One of them is we're going to go back to our old friend SSH. SSH is capable of doing tunnels. Now, there are a couple of different kinds of tunnels that you can do with SSH, and I'm going to do just some simple port forwarding here. When I connect to a port on one side, the traffic is tunneled through the SSH connection and let go on the other side, where it goes to a destination that's configured ahead of time. So I'm going to set up this SSH tunnel, and I'm going to go to my little standby Linux server. Now here's where I set up the tunnel. I'm going to say connections to local port 2300, and I'm specifying 2300 here because if I used the real port, I would have to have administrative privileges, and I can certainly do that, but this is a little bit easier. Connections to 2300 on this side are going to go to the server localhost on the other side, meaning it's going to terminate at this server that I'm connecting to. And I want to connect that to port 23 there. So what I'm really doing is I'm tunneling telnet from here to the other end, and I'm going to connect to a telnet server on that side. So I've got my SSH session open, and I should have a tunnel. And I'm going to check that now. So I'm going to connect to port 2300 on my local system, and that should connect me through to the other side. Log in here. Now I am logged in, and you can see that I am logged into the system bill, which you can see from my prompt here, which is the server that I'm connected to on the other side. You can see here I've SSH'd in, and I get the same prompt as when I did a telnet in. Now I can do this again, and this time, just to make it even more clear, I'm going to SSH, and I'm going to use the local port 23, which is the telnet port, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And in this case, since I'm using a privileged port, which is a port that's under 1024, in this case 23, I have to have administrative privileges, so I'm running this with sudo. And because I'm running it as root, it doesn't have the keys stored in that context, and so I've got to type my password here. Now I'm logged in, and I should be able to just telnet localhost. And it's skipping the username, but now it's giving me the password prompt, and so I can do this, and I am logged in to the system via telnet. But the telnet is being tunneled through this SSH connection in this first window over here. So that's one way of doing tunneling. You can use SSH to do your tunneling for you. One of the advantages of using SSH is, in addition to tunneling the traffic, it's also encrypted. You've got a layer of encryption, and then you've got a layer of tunneling of telnet traffic inside SSH. Another way of doing tunneling is using an HTTP tunnel. There is a package called HTTP tunnel, which allows this to happen. So I've got a server and a client, And in this case, I've just run the server with help to show you the different parameters that are required in order to get connections from a client. And in this case, the client is called HTC. And I've got mostly the same types of parameters here to start up the client. So you can see HTC is the client connection, and then I connect to a host and a particular port. And the default port for HTS is apparently 8888. I can use this client-server model in order to tunnel traffic that looks like HTTP traffic. Another way of doing the same thing is there's this company here that offers HTTP tunneled products, and you can see they've got an HTTP tunnel client. This is payware, although it says here the low bandwidth service features a free option for moderate users. So it looks like there is a possibility of doing this HTTP tunnel client for free without doing this subscription model here. So that's a couple of different ways of doing tunneling. Another option to do tunneling, and as I said, it's probably a good option because often HTTP and certainly particular ports are generally allowed through firewalls. So you could do your tunnel out through the firewall and be able to connect your data through without worrying about it being blocked at the network edge.